Nicholas Angelo Ordell was a simple man. As a young boy growing up around the time of slavery, he had seen and learned many things. He had formed opinions of his own. He decided that, when he grew older, he would become an abolitionist. And so he did. A decade after the time of Reconstruction, he told his story to a great number of people. Crowds were gathering to hear his tale, and the risks he took to abolish slavery and give rights to the men who were treated as less equal. Nicholas was heading to town to talk to the crowds and buy some of their fresh goods. He preferred walking to town because the streets were often packed with freedmen looking for jobs and costermongers. Nicholas had the day off and was heading to the crowds to go and see how the government was doing. He liked hearing the people's opinion. When he needed new ideas to share with the Congress, he often went out and asked the crowds. Nicholas! Nicholas Ordell! Nicholas heard someone calling his name. He quickly turned around. Jed. Jed was a slave that Nicholas had helped free from his owner. He hadn't seen Jed ever since the Civil War had ended. After the war, they had went their separate ways, searching for a stable job and caring for their families. Take a walk with me, he told Jed. How you been doing? Jed asked. Been doing mighty well. How about yourself? Replied Nicholas. Been doing all right. It's been hard trying to find a job out here, but ever since the Congress released that sharecropping idea, it took a load off of me. Well, that's good to hear. Since he had been elected into the government, he had been trying to help the freedmen find jobs. Jed and Nicholas had finally made it into town. There was commotion happening throughout the crowd. A little boy from a fruit stand tugged on Nicholas's pants and looked up at him. Excuse me, mister, but the crowd's been stirring. They saying they want to hear one of them stories of yours again, said the boy. Nicholas approached the crowd and pulled up a seat from one of the stands. Now, let's see. Nicholas scanned the crowd, thinking of which story he should tell. Ah, I know, said Nicholas, having an idea. I'll tell you all about Eli Whitney's cotton gin. Eli Whitney patented the cotton gin on March 4th, 1794. Of course, I was still a young boy at the time, but I understood that the cotton gin was very important. Transformed the world. One man could produce 50 times more cotton. The idea of mass production entered the minds of many, and it opened up their eyes to tons of possibilities. I loved the idea that we were making money out of it, but I despised the idea that slaves were forced to work in the cotton. Boy, did I hate the idea that people owned other people. My family themselves were slave owners. That made me real heated up when I saw my papa whip one of them. I knew it was wrong. I just didn't know how to stop it. I thought owning slaves was a big mistake. That reminds me of our good president, Abraham Lincoln. I remember when he released the Emancipation Proclamation, that on the first day of January, in the year of our Lord, 1863, all persons held as slaves shall be thenceforward and forever free. I suppose he was the greatest president we had ever had. The happiest time of my life as an abolitionist was when the new amendments were ratified. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery. Now that one was established by the fall of 1865. And then there was the 14th Amendment, which gave freedmen full civil rights. That amendment meant that they had to be treated as equal. It was about time, too. The 15th Amendment said that a citizen's right to vote shall not be denied. Good thing, because freedmen needed the chance to vote. Actually, they made up the majority of voters. Of course, there were also the white Southerners who had not supported secession, and the Northerners who had moved to the South after the war. Believe it or not, it wasn't all good news for the freedmen. Those white men who wanted to keep their way of life kept getting in the way, like them black codes. Now, these served three purposes. One of them was to limit the rights of freed men. That's probably the reason why the 14th Amendment was established. Another purpose was that planters needed people to replace their freed slaves. Freedmen had to find a job, or else they would be arrested and hired out to planters. The last purpose was to keep freedmen at the bottom of the social order in the South, but most codes called for segregation of blacks and whites in public places. The sun was starting to set, and the sky was turning a deep shade of blue. Goodness me, it's getting late, isn't it? I better get going. There were complaints throughout the crowd, especially from the children. I know, but I'll be back soon with more stories. How soon, sir? Asked the little boy Jacob from the fruit stand. Soon enough, said Nicholas. He stood up from his chair and placed it back in the fruit stand where he took it from. He turned and walked away from the crowd. Truth be told, Nicholas could never come back here again. There were too many memories of his family being taken by the Ku Klux Klan and murdered because he worked for the Republican government. That is why he had almost quit his job. But then he realized he had to help the freedmen, and that is the only reason why he stayed. For freedmen to finally be treated as equals and have equal rights was his life ambition. And he headed home, smiling all the way, knowing that he had in fact accomplished what he needed.